you can't pick and choose how you want to analyze your organization's culture. What we've done is to say it's generic, and as a result, it means that we can compare kind of organizations across different sectors, different sizes, because it's all the same question set. And as a result, because there is an element of standardization, we can then bring that down, bring the cost of that down, so that actually it becomes more affordable.
Hi, my name is Dimitri Panici, and I'm a content creator, agency owner, and AI enthusiast. You're listening to the AI Agents Podcast, brought to you by Jotform, and featuring our very own CEO and founder, Ida Tank. This is the show where artificial intelligence meets innovation, productivity, and the tools shaping the future of work. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AI Agents Podcast. In this episode, we have James Leavesley, the CEO and founder of Cultiv8tiv. How are you doing today, James?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Dimitri?
I'm doing awesome. Well, just to kind of get things started, I really want to get a little bit of background on you. You know, how did you get into AI in the first place? And, you know, tell us a little bit about, you know, what that story was like for you, and then we'll get into more about Cultiv8tiv.
Yeah, so I guess they come together anyway. Because that was my journey into AI. So I was kind of hugely passionate about organizational culture. You know, having had experiences of kind of running a business where the culture, through no kind of real deliberate action, became a little bit siloed and maybe a little bit toxic. And then we turned that around. And then I've then also been on the receiving end of toxic cultures and whatnot. And I'm sure, many people have been in kind of similar situations. So what I really wanted to do was to find a way of quickly, cheaply, and creatively to quantify and analyze an organization's culture. And pretty much the only way that you can really do that is actually through using AI. And that was really our kind of entry into the world of AI, which was actually just around kind of analyzing a large data set that had been collected deliberately that blends kind of quantitative and qualitative information to build a comprehensive picture of kind of what's going on within an organization's workplace culture.
Interesting. Okay. So just kind of like getting into that, what was the main aha moment that, kind of triggered everything for you?
So probably going back kind of like 6, 7, 8 years maybe.
Okay.
And it was a journey where, you kind of, as a CEO, you rarely get to see the organization in its kind of rawest form, because when you walk in the room, you're in a meeting, everybody's on their best behavior. That's just the way it is. You're the boss. So
yes, you are.
So for what I ended up witnessing one day was a bit of a breakdown between teams. You could see some animosity, see people weren't on the same page. I realized we got some issues. And so, I called my mentor and said, this is what's going on. What do we do? And he said, you got some issues with the culture. Let me come in. So he interviewed everybody, built up a report around what's going on within the organization. And, it was, wasn't great reading. I think it was, you felt pretty vulnerable, because I think as every CEO, you are actually also the chief culture officer. So
sure, that's a good point.
So you are the person that is residing over the organization's culture, whether that is that you've set it up and, and you're deciding about really how important that is and the work that you want to do. Where does it sit in the kind of priority order? And so, it was a moment of apology to the organization. It was technically I'm residing over the culture and it's not great. That's what's come back in the feedback. So what we need to do is we need to go on a journey, and I really want to ask for your help. We went on that journey. prioritized the culture, built it into the systems, built it into processes. It changed how we interacted with each other, and it just created a better place to work. And over a 12-month period, it was it was like night and day in terms of the organization. And it was a better place to work. We were more productive. We were innovating better, commercially more successful. All the metrics were leading to were in a, moving in a positive direction. And that really was the kind of aha moment of the importance of workplace culture. You know, we then exited that business, and that went into an organization where culture kind of not great. And it was really obvious where what we had and what we had gone into. And I think so it was probably a combination of seeing a not great culture, going on a journey to embed a good culture, a positive culture into an organization, and then going back to seeing a not great culture again. Was probably that really was the aha moment, because that meant that I just had a passion for that area. And this became, the journey that we then went on was to build that framework, build some tech to be able to help organizations to understand the culture they have so they can build the culture they want. And that's really
Mm,
the most important point is, where are you today? Because actually you can't build a culture unless you know what your starting point is. And there are so many influences. Most organizations just don't ask the right questions. So as a result, you just never really know. So most, especially in kind of scaling businesses, the culture is heavily influenced by the CEO, the founder. And, as you start to grow, then, the culture becomes diluted because less and less people get to work with the CEO all the time, and therefore they
sure.
can't emulate and copy that person's behaviors and understand what's important to them. So it's about helping the CEO to really understand what's going on within the organization. So then you can fix the leaks, build on the strengths, et cetera, et cetera. And that's basically what we've done.
Okay. And do you feel like a lot of companies are kind of like dropping the ball when it comes to this thing with like culture? I
Yeah.
mean, in the context of the CEO being connected to it, probably would be the most
Yeah,
fair question.
I think, I think it's culture tends to fit, within the kind of like the human resource department, the people department. And it can sometimes be, like in the UK, we call it engagement, and can be like a box ticking exercise. We're doing this just to check, like, are people still happy? And actually, the questions aren't inspiring. The information, they're not really gathering kind of the real information. We're not asking the gritty questions. So actually, you don't really know what's going on. So you're getting a pretty bland, yeah, we're okay. And, that can mean we are genuinely okay, things are good, we're pretty motivated, or it's we're just telling you that because actually I can't be bothered to go into any level of detail because I know that you're not going to act on it. So, because we're not given the opportunity to tell you the information that, about how we're feeling, what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of get to see trends. You just don't get to see what's actually driving those trends. And that really is what we've uh, what we have done, is to then basically just ask a different set of questions, gritty questions, get underneath the skin of the business, find out what's really going on, and then build that picture back up, into a full written narrative, and then present that to the leadership team.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And just out of curiosity, I mean, you've been around since November of 23, right? Is that correct? Okay, very cool. How did you kind of get up and running and off the ground so quick? I feel like you've made some, solid waves. I feel like you have like a good, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when I took a look at your website, I feel like, you've already established yourself so well in the last 2 years. Like, is that a part of the culture that you're trying to build, just being fast moving, or what does it kind of look like internally that you've been able to kick the ground running so fast in only 2 years?
Yeah, so I think we didn't spend any time writing a business plan, which is and that was kind of there was a kind of deliberate move, really, because what we want to do was bootstrap the business. So
Mm,
I kind of so I pulled together my old kind of tech team and some new individuals, explain the vision of what we were setting out to
kind of do. Yeah.
achieve, and then we just got onto building stuff. So and that really was so we and then got it into the hands of organizations as quickly as possible. The biggest mistake is to try and sell something too early. So we were just giving it away, getting that feedback and then iterating on that. And I think that really kind of helped us to shape the products, because we have multiple products, um, and also really helped us to kind of try and decide, what is our go-to-market route. And so because the original business plan was focused on uh, targeting real organizations, CEOs, leadership teams and whatnot. But actually, you know, they tend to be so busy that culture, it's a bit of a non-entity. They're not quite sure what it means, and therefore, it's why would I spend any time on it? Why would I spend any money on it? And so, so in the UK, actually, we have lots of kind of what we call kind of fractional kind of HRDs, HR directors, chief people officers, who work with organizations of kind of various different sizes, who actually have a detailed understanding about kind of what's happening, kind of how things go with recruitment. What does the churn rate look like? Are we losing good people? Does productivity look like it's heading in the wrong direction? And these are all the kind of markers that actually are underpinned by a potentially some issues with the culture, and so actually by working through that channel, then actually it means that we can be brought in to fix a problem, and then have somebody who can then act on that information and then support and help that business. Because one of the challenges
Yeah.
that I think a lot of CEOs have is you give them the information, and then what do I do? How do I take this forward? And I think there's the concept of self-reference criteria. I was when I got hold of this information, I knew exactly what I needed to do to build out the culture, to put things back on track, to put the systems in place, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I pretty quickly learned that not all CEOs are programmed like that. They don't have an interest in that particular area. And so therefore what they need is like a helping hand to be able to do that. And actually I didn't want to build a consultancy. So,
Mm.
what I didn't want to do was build a consultancy where we're using the tech and then having the people, because actually I needed scale. And to get scale, it really had to be um, easily accessible by organizations. That could be by the CEO, could be by the anyone in the leadership team, but also can be used as a tool in the toolkit by kind of fractional chief people officers and HR and leadership consultants.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did have a question actually about, what you're doing in two different ways. First, this is more of a general question about your company. How does it feel kind of like you're in the UK, right? Obviously. A lot of people are in, more Silicon Valley, those type of places when they're in tech. Like, what is it like kind of working as a company like yourself in this AI space? Not only not being in the Silicon Valley, but not being in the States, because I feel like that's where maybe a lot of the innovation is. If not, and maybe I just don't have the insight of what it's like over there in the UK. To be honest, I'd love to hear
Yeah,
more about that. Yeah.
I think I mean, we are. Yeah, I've never been asked that question before. The, but yeah,
Yeah. No, it's just a
I've
curiosity thing.
I've also
Yeah.
never worked in the US, so it's going to be a
Yeah.
little bit difficult to. So I
Sure.
think AI is, we're obviously a little bit behind the curve, compared to the US, or that's what we're kind
Okay.
of seeing
Sure.
on the news and whatnot. All the big innovations, are obviously coming out of the US and to some extent, kind of China now. But actually, there's a lot of organizations now in the UK that actually are utilizing AI, maybe in only a small way, but actually to create efficiencies in, and bring a kind of fairly niche product, to market, which is technically what we're doing. So, we're solving a problem or a number of problems. It just so happens that we're using AI. So, and I think people are now broadly aware of what AI does and can do. I think there's still a little bit of skepticism as well. So we still meet people where they either don't trust it or and whatnot. So I mean that's where we're at. But I think there's some really good adoption, and people are or organizations are embracing it because it is being able to do things quicker, faster, cheaper. So hey, why would
Absolutely.
why would you not embrace those benefits?
No, it's a very good point. And yeah, no, I was just genuinely curious because it seems like the most people I interview on this show are stateside, and like people are like, oh, I want to go to Silicon Valley if they're not there, right? Like the people I've interviewed, people from New York, Boston, whatever, and it seems to be an interesting. Obviously it's been a tech hub for a while, but with AI especially, it seems like that as well. So that was just more of a curiosity thing. But getting back to more what you're doing in your business, you know, you talked a little bit about, um, you know, what you guys do, and just to kind of dive in a little bit more to, culture assessments and the like, right? I feel like it's almost quantifying like the invisible, right? Like I feel like, especially when I was working at a normal company, like traditional culture assessments are a little bit more. They felt subjective, at least to me. How does your AI powered platform like actually quantify something as intangible as like workplace culture across all the key areas that it quantifies? How does it like do that?
Yeah, so we engage with some academics, leadership professionals, and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
built out a framework, and then the
Mm,
question hang off the back of that. A lot of what we are. I think you use the phrase. We're trying to quantify the invisible. So,
yeah.
I think so. So we're still asking questions. Which have numerical responses. Therefore, actually, it's the so we're asking, to what extent is everybody in the company treated equally?
Mm,
You give that a numerical response, but actually it's the explaining your answer. That's the open bit that then sits
mm,
underneath that. So actually what you can then do is to take the scoring, which you obviously get, and then we can then underpin a narrative that sits behind that, which is talking about the issues and the challenges, and some to some degree quantifying that across the organization as well. So it's about being able to take the what you would have done in your previous life, and actually start to underpin that with a narrative as well.
hmm. No, that makes sense to me. It seems a little bit, it seems very valuable. Don't get me wrong, but it just gets kind of hard to pin down, so to speak.
Yeah, no,
Um,
and I think I think it's a super intangible thing, and I think that's why a lot of people don't give it the kind of respect that it deserves, because actually, you generally don't respect things you don't understand. And what we're trying to do is to say, hey, it's not that difficult. It's just about culture is about getting the basics right. So it's how the company is led, how people are managed, how people interact, various different standards and consistencies that you have across the organization. So again, when we're playing this back to the organization, we're saying these are the basics. You do this well, you will have a great, you will have a good culture.
Mm.
So,
Well, it's interesting because you seem to have you've coined a term here, the culture pulse score. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Could you talk to us a little bit more about what that means specifically
Yeah.
and
So,
what that kind of
so
measures?
Yeah, so that's the quantifiable measure of how healthy, how strong the organization's culture is. That is built from the
Got
insights
it.
that are gathered. So that is that's the number that the organization has that actually is able to give them technically a grading of how strong and healthy their culture is.
Okay. And what kind of like variables is it? Go back to what you just said a little bit earlier. Is that what kind of variables specifically kind of pop up in there?
So that's the single measure. So how that is
No,
built.
yeah, but what are the things that like get together? How do I say this? Like, what are they measuring in order to make or gathering in order to make that measure point? Is that the right wording
Yeah.
I'm looking for?
So basically building out all the responses,
Mm,
so all of that is then feeding in and influencing that single measure. So, you get a breakdown, you get all the actual responses, all the individual questions and whatnot, and the narrative and everything else. But those responses and what those are made up of feeds into that kind of individual score.
interesting. Okay, that makes sense. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to get like more of a understanding of that because it's once again definitely a little bit intangible, which I don't think is bad. It's kind of curious to know how you pull that through. Um, I saw that you had a case study with a company with Hogan Group, where you helped test assumptions. Sorry, stutter of city. Test assumptions in a family-run business. What
Yeah.
surprised them the most about what your AI kind of revealed versus what they thought they knew?
Yeah. So I think, you when you're leading a business, you kind of have a gut feel.
Mm,
So you think where the challenges are. You think
sure.
um, you know where the pinch points are, what the issues are. What you do well. You will even perceive yourself as how well do we think that we lead the organization. And so they start with all of these assumptions, and then obviously we they deploy our tech, gather the responses, build a picture, presents that back to the organization, and that either it either affirms that they're right in some areas, or the other way, which is actually that actually their assumptions are wrong, and you'd be it's surprising how many organizations uh, just are a little bit unaware of kind of what's really going on within their organization, and I think we kind of started this. So mentioned this uh, at the very start, which was as the CEO or even anybody who's in a leadership position, when you are around people, you employees, when you're in meetings, whether you're interacting with people, they're always on their best behavior. So you don't get a
No.
true you don't you don't get a true picture of what's
Yeah.
going on. So only certain information actually is going to make its way up to you. So you get quite a distorted picture about what's really going on within the organization. Actually, when we say a lot of the survey options that you get are you're provided with all the raw data. So which means that you can technically track down who said what, because you've got a person's all their individual responses, so you can build a pretty accurate picture of who that person is. So, you know, we take that away because we don't provide the raw data. We are then just building that picture. So when we say anonymous, we mean anonymous. So it gives people a level of comfort that actually when they are providing, real honesty in their responses, then actually you get a more accurate picture. So, if you think about the scenario, CEO walks into a room and asks a whole bunch of individuals, are you enjoying working here? What do you think the responses are going to be? Not a single person is just say, I actually, I don't enjoy working here, and actually, I'm currently looking for another job. You know, like that is not going to be that's not going to happen. And so I think as a result, what you get is a distorted view of the organization, and that feeds into your gut feel. So that's basically without giving away any kind of bits of confidential information, that they got a different picture compared to what their assumptions were. And that case in pretty much, any of the case studies will have always been the same, but all of the generally all assessments that we do, it's very rare to get that kind of direct mirror between the assumptions of the leadership and then what's actually going on in the eyes, through the eyes of the workforce.
Yeah. Do you feel like I don't want to say always, you're saying so it's distorted. Is it fair to say that those assumptions due to their experience are a little bit rose tinted, maybe? Like, because if everyone's always on their best behavior, you're not going to see the bad vibes, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think there's, as leaders, what CEOs, founders, you you are you are your DNA is about positivity. So it's about overcoming the impossible. That's how you get a business off the ground, and therefore you always believe that actually you're doing, you're always doing the best things. However, potentially that's it's not always having the right impact. Yeah, you might have the right strategy, but how you're treating people, how people are managed, how the organization is led, those things can be, and based on the individuals, but actually they will change over time, and they will also change as the organization evolves, because as it scales, you can't have these kind of one-to-one sit downs with, kind of 100 people, 200 people, 500 people. It's just logistically impossible. So actually, you could even if the CEO is consistent in all of their behavior and how they perceive the culture, as the organization scales, the needs of those employees will change.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I remember when I first started my own company, and the difference is at a couple people versus the bigger it's gotten, and it's at a smaller scale. So I can imagine it at those really large sizes, and I feel like you could get really, it just changes so much. Kind of going a little bit above and beyond kind of the surveys and in the baseline. Lots of companies do employee surveys, right? And a lot of companies use AI. What makes your combination of those two things, the anonymous assessment and AI analysis, a little bit different from competitors in the HR tech space?
Yeah, I think what we've done is we've created a standardized way to assess. So there's
Hmm.
you can't pick and choose how you want to analyze your organization's culture. What we've done is to say, it's generic, and as a result, it means that we can compare kind of organizations across different sectors, different sizes, because it's all the same question set. Um, and as a result, because there is an element of standardization, we can then bring that down, bring the cost of that down, so that actually it becomes more affordable. So I don't want to don't want to use the word cheap, but actually there's in this space, I think you said it's culture is can some feel kind of a little bit like it's an intangible. And so when there's an option to spend money or not, then it's too easy to say, yeah, we can just spend some money elsewhere. So what we wanted to do is to bring that in, create a generic product, and then be able to push that at a price point that it becomes a no-brainer for an organization to really understand the culture they have, so they can go on and build the culture they want.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Um, I just out of curiosity, with everything that you're doing right now, what are some of the new features inside of your product specifically that you feel like are or things that you're doing that you're most excited about?
Yeah, so I I I think it's just the concept overall,
Fair enough.
realistically, and because, kind of in the way, I mean, you hear some of these horror stories, kind of large, and they are government kind of organizations, where they kind of run these sort of survey assessments, and people put their responses in, and then it takes 6 months to get the results back. I mean, actually, you just might not, you should have just not bothered. Um, and so I think
Hmm.
for us, it's about actually the speed of turnaround. So the ability to get the data, analyze it, again, because you're using AI, we can analyze that super quick, and that's then back full written analysis and in someone's inbox, within a matter of hours, which means that you can take the information that you have, present the findings of that back to the organization, and then start with affecting change, positive change.
Hmm.
So for
Very
us, it's
cool.
about the speed. So
It's about the speed. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's fair. Like the longer that it's kind of sitting there and kind of, I mean, you know, with culture, I could imagine if it's going well, it could be going continues to go well. But I also feel like if it's going wrong in some areas, it can get wrong in a hurry, right? Like, and without proper like addressment of those things, um, it can cause some real problems. Like personally, I remember I worked at a marketing agency prior, um, and there was this like overwhelming sentiment that it wasn't the same as it used to be as it was growing, right? The company kept growing, kept growing. There was like a rumor that got leaked, and then that was confirmed if you had like a paid subscription to certain like investment type websites, that the company got bought out by a private equity firm, and they said that they got an investment in like the internal email. So like they essentially just like didn't shoot straight with us, right? That what had happened, and it just felt like the vibes were different. Like the margin was getting brought up all the time. It was like a weird change, and then it got to the point to where the rumor mill just got out of control, and everyone's vibes were just
so
low, and then people started leaving the company, myself included. And not that I started my own company, but other people were just like, I don't like it here anymore. I want to go. And I feel like that's the issue of not addressing these things, is like it can get bad quick.
yeah, I mean, I think
Because vibes were good for a year, like that I was there. Then that announcement happens for a couple months. It was questionable. Then they did a bunch of layoffs, and then the rumor mill came out when there was an article that was posted somewhere, and somebody did like the reverse engineering. Is like, oh my gosh, we got bought up by private equity. That's where everyone got laid off, not because we were doing worse, right? And sorry. Anyways, that's my story and
no, no,
explaining an
I
experience of like,
think,
wow, culture got bad, and I don't think the leadership did anything to
well,
be
so
connected.
I think the trust is a massive influence on
Mm.
the,
Mm-hmm.
so when, in the example you just shared, that, when the leadership were not honest, with the workforce, once people then knew, I mean, that fundamentally has destroyed all trust. So the culture would have taken a huge nosedive at that point, because there has to be trust between employee management, employee leadership, management leadership, and you erase that. Sometimes that gets erased over time, but I think what the example you've just shared is that is off a cliff. That is, and it's possible to come back from that. But actually, you have to draw a line, admit that you made a mistake, admit that you weren't fully open about kind of what had gone on, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can come back from it. But actually, if you don't do that, then you just destroyed the trust, and therefore the culture is then in a nosedive, going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, it's I appreciate that insight. That makes sense. So from your perspective, what's kind of beyond the business metrics, what's like the cultural transformation that you're hoping to create in the broader business world, right? Like what is the ethos of what you're doing here?
Yeah, so we sort of set ourselves a target, which was about helping 10,000 organizations build awesome cultures.
Mm,
Um, because we saw the power of having a okay, not great culture,
sure.
and then being able to transform that. I saw how positive that was on kind of all the business metrics, but actually it just made for a better place to work, and therefore which had an impact on the lives of the people that we employed. And so we want to help 10,000 organizations basically replicate that. And the starting point is to understand the culture you've got.
Yeah. Um, totally fair. I think it's so valuable what you're trying to do personally. I think like just having spoken from experience just now, like as you can tell, like I think the company culture thing kind of like strikes a nerve with me, and I'm very happy that you're doing stuff like this and helping people maybe find the misses that they are finding the misses that they have in their system and improving it. And I did have one funny question in here. So you're using AI to improve workplace culture at a time when AI is also disrupting jobs and isn't human, right? It's kind of funny, like non-human to help the human aspect. Is that irony lost on you, or have you thought about that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, it's not lost on me. And I think again, you're way further ahead, I think, in the States around, the impact. We talk about it a little bit, but it's, we're not seeing it, we're not seeing mass redundancies and things like this. So, what we are doing is actually, with the kind of HR and leadership consultants, they really want to do this work because they understand how powerful it is. But actually, when they have to do this manually, then they lose interest because they're people who like to strategize and then get involved in the execution. They're not analysts. They don't like manually analyzing large amounts of data. And this it disrupts. It's expensive. Clients got to pay. And so actually what this does is, through the use of AI, we're enabling consultants who really want to do this work to now be able to do it and offer it at to their clients to provide real value. Whereas before, they just didn't want to do it. Either the budget was just too excessive for the client, so client didn't want to go ahead, or actually they just couldn't fit the time in to be able to complete that analysis and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, we're helping people in a small way kind of make the world a better place. And that, whether that is for the fractional and HR consultants, or for the organizations. So I think we're doing something that people are less likely to do currently, but AI has enabled it to be accessible. So, I think that we're not putting people out of jobs, I think, at this stage, but I totally get the point, which is, around that.
No, yeah, and that's fair. I don't think you're putting people out of jobs necessarily. And I don't think honestly AI is in general right now, aside for some of big tech. Point was just like getting back to the more positive, which I actually did a good job like leading me into that, which I think kind of articulates how AI can actually help the human aspect of things, right? Because a lot of people are concerned in the matter of, it's like, oh, AI is going to get rid of the human side of work. But I don't know about that, because I feel like a lot of work is kind of robotic. It's a bunch of like nonsense, like responses to things that are pretty much like if then logic. And then this kind of opens up time, I think, for people to be more interactive, to do more in-depth things, right? Analyzing a huge data set, right? For the average person, it takes time, right? And compiling that data set, right? Asking the right questions takes some time. But being able to implement it on a human level, I think, is going to be freed up with this time that you're saving people, which is kind of the more important thing, right? Like, who wants to read the data set? Like, tell me what the data set says, honestly.
And also that, you humans have bias. So therefore they will pick up,
Yeah,
they will,
absolutely.
they will pick up one thing. And so I don't know, let's say the people analyzing it, have had some experience of kind of sexual harassment. There's reference of that in the data set. Suddenly that is really going to heavily influence how that person then interprets the rest of that data. So, so personal experience is going to heavily influence actually the outcome and the analysis and the direction that kind of any recommendations will go through. Whereas it's the nice thing about AI is that it's entirely objective. So, it doesn't have bias. So therefore you get a clean um, view of what's going on within the organization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just kind of on a more personal note, obviously, you did make comments about, what you guys are doing, and I think it's awesome. But just to kind of talk more about the industry at large a little bit, I noticed you had a lot of good privacy stuff on there, right? Like I believe SOC 2. No, I saw ISO 27.
2001, yeah.
20. Yeah, sorry. 20. Is it always 2701 or 27,001?
27,001.
Oh, okay. It's just so the codes are funny, and you have it seems like anonymity is like a core to your model, obviously. With AI getting more powerful, how do you kind of navigate the line between useful insights and potential privacy concerns, not only for your own company, but just maybe in general with everything going on in AI? Kind of is my main question, right?
So I think there are two things there. There's the data that is shared that then influences the models themselves. So pretty much all the stuff that we do on ChatGPT and things like this, all goes in to feed the beast, so to speak. And so actually, you have no privacy. As an individual, you are everything that you're feeding in. You are, is being used to train. I think when organizations like ours, when we're utilizing AI, actually because of the corporate scale and the corporate nature, we're actually keeping our data safe and within the confines of our systems, and it is not going in to train any external models and things like this. And I think especially in the UK, we have quite a strong focus on data security and data privacy. And that's a level of comfort that we kind of had to do, I think, because corporates expect it. So to have a focus on information security, we built information security into how we designed the product and actually all the systems and the architecture and everything else. So it over here in the UK, that is really important. And I think that's always a question that comes up, which is where does our data end up?
Hmm.
So, we can confidently say it stays within our systems, and it's not being leaked into training any models or any of the external kind of systems.
Hmm. And it's interesting to me because you said a comment which I feel like I've made a joke at for a while, because the marketing agency I worked at, right? It was a marketing agency, so I worked at Google. I did paid Google ads for them, And, obviously there's always the running joke that like they can hear your phone, right? They can hear you, which I don't think it's up in the air on whether that's true for me personally, but I don't think it is. But like for example, I've been making the joke for a while that like your data, no one's like, anybody that that's like, I am all about data privacy as an individual. I kind of chuckle because I'm like, the cat's been out of the bag since like 13, 14. I'm like, what are you talking about? The second I was like, you've been tracked nonstop for a while. And now with the adventation of people knowing your conversations in these different AI models, if you have topics of interest, you tend to go there consistently. You're training the models on your data. I totally agree with you. I really do think cat's out of the bag, right? Kind of on that one.
And I agree. And I think as a, as an individual, then we're free to, use Facebook, use Instagram, kind of WhatsApp, any of the systems and whatever. And, you are exposed, I think, in that way. I think organizations are extremely sensitive about their data, and therefore, and so they're, and kind of rightly so, because what they have to know where their data is being stored, how it's being looked after, and what happens to it, and so I totally get the fact that, you sitting in meetings, you all got your phones and whatever. And, and like you said, I actually do think that, your phone is listening to you and listening to the conversation, because actually that is then generating ads and, various other things that, you're seeing. And you can test that out, kind of anyway, just to see how bizarre, things that you can talk about as a one-off, and then how quickly they start coming through on Google Ads and things like this. But actually, I think in a corporate sense, they just want to know, we're going to provide you with this data. Where's it going? What are you going to do with it? So, all organizations are super hot on that topic, especially over in the UK.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, as companies, obviously, I think there's something you can do about it, but I just think about the personal aspect.
Yeah.
You got to calm. You got like, not saying people have to calm down, but sort of saying like, you haven't cared since you had the iPhone, and you've had the iPhone for a while. And then I know, so I had some friends who it was hard for them to hear this. They were like, hey, I don't use Apple. I think Apple's probably the best phone when it comes to security, from my understanding, at least that I know. I could be totally wrong here, but they're like, oh no, don't use Apple, use Android. And I laughed, and they're like, what is this? Like, obviously this is more secure. I'm like, who owns Android? And they go, I don't know. I'm like, Google. How does Google make all their money? It's like, because it's not from those two things you have to scroll past every time when you Google something. Yeah, anyways, it's one of my little rants about privacy, but I appreciate your insight there. So on a more positive, fun note, just to kind of close that out, obviously everyone has their own interests in AI and kind of how they use tools and stuff. Tell me a little bit about your favorite thing to use personally when it comes to AI. Obviously, if you have your own product, that's great. But what is your favorite personal tool that you use on a day-to-day basis to get your work done, or even for personal use?
Yeah. So I think I use, I use, I don't tend to use specific things for specific kind of actions. So, for me, I kind of be super generic. ChatGPT is the one that, I kind of, I guess I grew up with, if that's the right phrase. That was the first one out, and that's the kind of thing, my kind of go-to thing for most things. And if I struggle, or if I start seeing flaws within that, then I'll go and seek out other things. But, for me, it's a bit of good old ChatGPT.
Okay, cool. I don't know. Some people like certain ones. Like one I'm looking right now is I found out about, it's called Crisp AI. You can like, obviously there's a lot of phone call recorders or meeting recorders, but this one's really cool because it can enhance the background, like remove the background sound. So there's about like a noticeable like 0.5, 0.7 second delay, but it like noise cancels any background noise on meetings. So you can kind of have like a ad hoc hectic meeting on the go, right? And it'll do a way better job than, like something like these will do for blocking out the background noise. So that's my personal one right now. All right. Well, tell everyone where we can find you, and if you have any closing remarks, let everyone know.
Yeah. So find me on LinkedIn. So James Leavesley, pretty unique name. So you'll probably be able to get my details relatively easily. Hopefully, Dimitri, can we kind of put my LinkedIn profile and whatnot within
In the description.
Yeah. Cool.
Sure.
So and then the website is cultiv8tiv.com. So again, we'll put the details in so that hopefully you can click through. But yeah, be great. Please come over, connect, and check out our tech.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, everyone, make sure to go to cultiv8tiv.com just so you know how that, obviously it's in the link is in the description down below, but it is CULTIV, the number 8 TIV.com. That's cultiv8.com. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, leave a review. James, leave a review. We really appreciate that. And with that being said, we'll see you all in the next one. Thanks.